Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm Tim Laskus, and you're listening to The Tim Laskus Show. This is episode 66, just like that old Route 66. How many of you out there have been on it? I've been on parts of it when I was out west. It's pretty cool. But anyway, before we get on to today's featured guest, my cool sponsor is Audible. How many of you out there have a difficult time reading an entire book, a magazine article, a few paragraphs without your mind racing and reading it over and over and over? I've got my hands up because I have that problem. But what I can do is listen to a audiobook because I can do all kinds of other stuff. I can work on the computer, I can text, I can do other stuff while that information is going into my brain. And a really cool book that's on Audible is Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. Many of you know him. And that's a book that you can get for free, an audiobook. So go over to my website, timlaskus.com/resources. Click on the Audible link and you'll get a free audiobook and a free 30-day trial. If you don't like it, tell them, this sucks. I don't want it anymore. But you still get a free audiobook. Can't beat that. But I know that you won't say that. You'll love it because Audible is very, very cool. So go to timlaskus.com/resources. Click on the Audible link. Now, on to today's featured guest, who is Bruce Wawrzyniak. I think I got that correct. Woo, I'm going to give myself a little clap and a pat on the back. But anyway, Bruce has a diverse background in marketing, broadcasting, promotions, public media relations, and he's worked in all sorts of industries, from sports and entertainment, and radio, television, advertising, and he even taught like promotion techniques at a local, I guess, college near where he lives. He's been featured in USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, Sports Illustrated, which is very cool. And he's been a speaker all over the United States and around the world, and he's currently the president and founder of Now Hear This, which is a management, promotion, and booking company. And Bruce shares incredible tips for all of you out there of how to build your brand and be memorable so people don't forget you. So I know you're going to like it, so sit back and enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests, entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Hey, Bruce, thanks for being on the show today. I'm super happy that you're able to join me.
Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here.
Hey, you were telling me that you're a big Tampa Bay Rays. What is it? The Tampa Bay Rays? Is it the baseball team?
Well, yes, the Tampa Bay Rays are the Major League Baseball team here, but I'm a big fan of all of the Tampa sports teams. So the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also. I really find myself quite passionate about all three of those. So whichever one is in season, I'm following them very closely.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I like the Tampa Buccaneers, and when they changed their logo, I don't know how many years ago, that was a pretty cool thing. I didn't like that kind of old logo that they had for such a long time.
Yeah, ironically, the former logo that they had, the quote-unquote mascot, the guy whose picture was on the helmet, was named Bucko Bruce.
Bucko Bruce. But it looks like they have a lot of fun down in the end zone. They got that like big pirate ship, and looks like there's like half party and half football.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big mixture.
And
Mardi
actually,
Gras.
the big news here these days is the NFL awarding the Super Bowl that will be played in February of 2021 to Tampa Bay. So this will be the fifth time that I can't say that facility because the old Tampa Stadium had hosted previously, but you're right. It makes for a great atmosphere, and it makes for a great facility for the city to host another Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, Tampa's such a great place, and most of the time they have really good weather and nice and warm and tropical, so that's always fun. And we could have a whole show on that. But Bruce, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what are you currently working on professionally?
Well, my company is called Now Hear This, and the focus has always been management, promotion, and booking, primarily in the entertainment business, and in that mostly music. Although there have been some non-entertainment clients, such as authors, small businesses, even an Olympic athlete. Plus, over 3 years ago now, I launched a weekly podcast called Now Hear This Entertainment. And ironically, that was initially just thought to be something that I was doing as a marketing tool for my business. But wow, has it ever turned into so much more than that?
What has podcasting done for you? Because I haven't been doing it near as long as you, and it is amazing. And I'm kicking myself for not getting involved earlier. You've been doing it, you said, for about 3 years. What has it really done for you and your business, your brand, and just getting your name out there?
Well, it certainly allows you to reach people who you otherwise wouldn't be able to reach, especially if you're talking international. But even in the scope of a business that could have national reach, that could service clients nationally, but just doesn't know how to get there as quickly and as easily. But really, Tim, I think one area that it's opened up for me for my business that I don't think I expected is that, in my opinion, the guest on my show every week, they become a new contact for me. So I feel comfortable with the relationships that I build with the people that I interview, that those are people that I can now call upon, and not necessarily for favors, but there's so many different ways, as we all know, that you can collaborate nowadays. And I have, in fact, drawn upon some of those people that have been guests on my podcast. So again, it goes back to, had I never launched that, I would have never met those people. And thus, those opportunities that we've collaborated on either would have gone by the wayside, or I would have had to have tried to find someone else, in all likelihood, locally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have met so many incredible people in different backgrounds from, business and entertainment and professional sports that I never would have had the opportunity if it wasn't for podcasting. And it has done more for me than actually being an author, which I wrote a book back in 2007. And that didn't open up as many as doors, not even close to what podcasting done is just in a couple of months. So I just can't rave enough about it.
Yeah, I imagine. And in my case, I guess you make a good point there when talking about books, because I have launched an ebook series that is only possible because of my podcast. So had I not launched the podcast, I wouldn't have necessarily had the idea, because it was only born out of giving out these tips every week on my podcast.
Absolutely. So your podcast just keeps creating new opportunities for you that you're just, jumping on. And that's awesome. Now, to get back a little bit to, your company that you have for managing, entertainers and speakers and things. How does that work? How does someone approach you, and what do you do for them?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I usually start off by talking about what Now Hear This doesn't do, because I do have a lot of performers or even people who will try to refer someone to me. And the thinking is that Now Hear This is a booking agency, and it's not. Yes, booking is part of the services that Now Hear This provides, but in developing my business many years ago, I learned the hard way that it just didn't make sense to do only booking. So some of it is word of mouth, some of it is referrals, some of it is me being out at various events and quote unquote discovering talent on my own, but then really kind of discussing with that person what their goals and objectives are, and then how Now Hear This fits into that. Because we all have something that we specialize in, but that means there's other areas of weakness. So in my case, I have found that musicians are really terrific at the music that they create. They're really terrific at performing. They're really terrific at those types of activities. However, when it comes to properly marketing themselves, that's where I lean on my background of an entire professional career spent in public relations, media relations, promotion, marketing, social media, that type of work, and saying, this is where you're lacking and this is where my strong suit is. So I know that I can help you. Let's build your brand together. Let's tell your story together, rather than book us to play at your place because we're really good. Well, that's just hearsay. That's just your own opinion. So let's show these places, let's show media people, let's show any interested audience, someone in the music industry, what your story is and why you are worthy of whatever it is that you're asking that person for.
Gotcha. Now, could you help someone like me who doesn't have any talent? Is there anything you could do for me?
I could refer you to a vocal coach.
I might need several, because I don't have any talents, Bruce. So yeah, you probably are just going to turn me away, but that's okay. I understand. Now, how long have you been at this with your company right now? Now Hear This.
For whatever reason, when people ask me that, I always point to the fact that in 2004 is when I actually incorporated the company in the state of Florida. So if you want to go by that, then it's been 13 years.
Gotcha. So you've been doing this for quite a while, and so I'm sure you've learned along the way, not only to help your clients, but also what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Could you provide a couple of tips for the listeners out there who are just kind of in the beginning stages of entrepreneurship, or they're thinking about taking that leap? What would you give them that could help them along the way?
When I get asked, there's one group in particular that I'm thinking of that I go to where we do something where the format calls for the participants to share one important lesson in business that you've learned. So the one that I always go back to is, before I became an entrepreneur, the boss that I worked for always stressed the importance of being seen. And I'm not exaggerating. He would literally travel halfway around the world to go sit in a meeting for 3 hours and then come back. And his point to us was, if you're not there, they'll forget about you. So I guess it's the out of sight, out of mind concept. So basically, my advice is get involved in networking groups, business groups, do one-on-ones with people, and so forth. And then my second tip would be to have some real trusted confidants that you can bounce things off of. But at the same time, make sure these are individuals who are successful themselves, and that there's someone that you admire business wise. I'm not talking about bouncing ideas off of mom and dad. So these are people that, when you, especially if you're a solopreneur, and I don't want to say it's a tie-breaking vote, but something that you're really torn with, you're doing the pros and cons, and you just can't make an informed decision, or you don't feel comfortable that you're really able to make peace with the decision you think you've reached. You want to have someone that you can go to say, what are your thoughts on this? And I can assure you they're going to come up with something that you haven't thought of. And I know, Tim, that you like to ask for resources that people can use that are beneficial. And I'm someone that really kind of likes when someone gives help as far as websites, or actual mouse clicks. Here's some real hand holding. So I like to use a website called Canva, Canva.com. It's like canvas without the S. Hopefully, most people are shaking their head saying, yeah, I'm familiar with it, because it is pretty popular. But especially because you phrased the question, people who might just be getting started, if you don't have any kind of budget for a designer, you don't need one with Canva. They have lots of free options on there. They do have some paid stuff, which might cost you all of $1. But Canva is great because you can get some professional looking images in this day and age where we all have to do so much with social media. If you're not a designer like myself, where I just really struggle to come up with things that look visually appealing, it's good to be able to turn to a resource like that and be able to generate something that looks like you have a full-time designer working for you.
Hey, I'm glad you brought Canva up. I just used it this morning to put a post on Facebook and Instagram. So I love Canva. I mean, I use the free version. And I think occasionally I've, like you said, paid $1 for one of their, I stock photos or whatever they have. But they have a number of free stuff, and it really does. It helps you look more professional. It looks like you have a design team behind you, and you really don't. It's just free, so you jump on there. So I love that. Now, you talked about having confidence. So you wouldn't recommend going to your drunk, like Uncle Earl, and kind of running some ideas by him, right?
Not unless the advice you're seeking is, how do I become a drunk?
How do I drink more beer, Earl? So, and then, even before that, you talked about, having a boss who would, travel, all long distance just for a short meeting and then come back, and that is amazing, because on the surface it kind of sounds like, well, that's dumb, why would you do that? But then again, as you talked about it, having people actually see your face is so meaningful, and it keeps you fresh on their minds.
Well, sure, because if you think of all the networking groups that are out there, and granted, I want to make sure that I'm clear to people that, networking groups are great, but don't put all your eggs in the networking basket. They're not the be all end all. And my point, though, is that if you are going to belong to networking groups, professional groups, things of that nature, it's exactly that. It's out of sight, out of mind. You can't complain about not getting any referrals, not getting any business, not getting any help from these groups if you're never there. And I did find out, as I started wading into the networking pool, that if you try to just hit as many as you can by showing up as a guest one time, people are not going to remember who you are. So, find one that makes sense for you and have regular attendance at it, and it will pay off over time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight in terms of results. And like I said, you can't just do a one and done, but you've got to put the time in, and that way, on the 1 week that you have to miss for whatever reason, people won't forget who you are because you're never there.
Mm. Now, you had mentioned earlier that you had incorporated in, I believe, 2004,
Right.
your company that's Now Hear This. Was that your first kind of rodeo with entrepreneurship? Like, what was going on with you that you even started this one? And did you start others?
Unless you want to count a lawn mowing business with a friend when I was a kid,
Yeah.
then I would say yes. Now Hear This was my first venture into the world of becoming an entrepreneur. And I'll try to make a long story short, but ironically, what happened was where I was working at the time, we needed a national anthem singer. And there was a young lady who sang in church every week whose voice I fell in love with. And when I asked her if she would do this, I also complimented her and said how much I enjoyed listening to her voice each week. And then said, look, my whole professional career, I've always been in public relations, promotion, marketing, that type of work. If you need any help, I'd be happy to help you out. And, right away, she kind of back down and was playing the dad card, oh, my thanks, but my dad helped me with everything. And I said, look, I'm just willing to do this for you out of the goodness of my heart, because I just think you're that good, and I think other people need to hear you. I would really enjoy hearing you if you sing outside of church at all. And she said, well, I actually do. And then we eventually broke down the barrier a little bit to, well, I guess you could help me with this. I guess you could help me with that. Which was probably the dad saying, if this guy wants to take some of this off my plate, great, because I'm just a realtor. I don't know anything about promoting. So, you know, once we started having some success, it became apparent to me that, hey, this is something that I think I can really make a go of. And then it really kind of became a case of, okay, how do I actually find some clients and start applying uh, these services that I'm giving to her to other people, so that I can show some additional results for other people, and grow this as a business.
So were you just kind of offering kind of free, services to her, like, hey, let me just help you and let's see what I can do for you?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, because initially I just felt so strongly about what a good voice she had, and because I was in a full time job at the time, I didn't really see a need to make a buck off of it. I just wanted to do it out of the kindness of my heart. And then this went on for a while. I don't want to make it sound like it was a month or 2 months. So I was kind of doing this quote unquote on the side. And then I still continued to keep my full time job as I moved through helping other people and seeing that, okay, I think I'm starting to get a little bit of momentum here. I'm not 100% sure that this is something I'm ready to do as a full time business yet. So I kept at it for a while. Full disclosure, quietly from my employer, but I saw that I was starting to get results for these people, and I thought, when the time is right, I'm going to make a go of this, because I'm seeing that this is really appealing to me, and I like and I hate to sound cliched, but I like seeing that I'm helping people go for their dreams. And that it really wasn't about the money, because, like I said, I had a full-time job. So I was enjoying the work. I was enjoying, quote unquote, calling the shots myself. And I've always been someone that, it's not about me. So I liked that this line of work offered me the opportunity where I'm not talking all about myself. I'm talking all about my clients.
Mm. I'm so glad you shared this story, because so many people who are starting out think that they need to get paid before they do anything. And I'm a big believer, go out and give your service or product away for free and see what happens and see what you get back. Just to get going, get your footing. Not to do that forever, because obviously you need to make a living, but to go out and just try and do something for free. So I'm so glad that you shared that, and you did it for a while. You're still working, kind of keeping everything undercover. So how did you know when the time was right to tell your boss, and what did you say to him or her?
Well, ironically, when I finally left that job, it wasn't to do Now Hear This full time. Um, I knew that the time was right, actually, based on the fact that who I was working for, the overwhelming funding source for that organization was going away. So there was no real succession plan in place. And I thought, well, if they don't know what they're going to do to replace what essentially is 85% of our operating budget, then I need to start making an exit plan here. And I will say, ironically, but it was God's hand in it that the timing worked out the way it did. An opportunity came along with an individual who the timing was just really perfect, that I thought, aha, if I can make a go of this business that this guy and I are talking about doing, this is the perfect time, because I can't stay here anymore. Otherwise, there's going to be a day where they're going to say, not only can we not pay salaries, but we can't even keep the lights turned on. So, I think when I went to him and told him, and mind you, this was going to be a faith-based organization that he and I were going to start up. So I think when I went to my boss and told him that I was leaving and told him that's what I was going to do, he wasn't really bothered by it, because I later found out that he was basically telling the staff, Bruce found his calling. So, it was almost as though I told him I'm leaving to become a priest. Like, hey, I can't stand in the way of that.
For sure. It sounds like you took a proactive approach instead of a reactive and just took control of the situation. You saw the writing on the wall, and it just kind of really worked out for you.
Yes.
And you had that client that was there at the right time.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. Now Bruce, let's move into the dig round, where I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. And if you could just answer quickly for me.
Okay.
What keeps you motivated?
Well, I've just always been a real hard worker, and knowing the hopes and plans I have keep me driven to reach those goals, and not to mention having a lot of work that has to get done for a lot of people. That's a natural motivator in and of itself.
Yes, absolutely. And are you your own kind of worst kind of critic? Like you always have that voice in the back of your head, like, okay, Bruce, you got to keep going. You got to do this. Don't forget that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Sending myself voice memos and, burning the midnight oil, as they say.
Yes. Well, that's a sign of a true entrepreneur. Now, who do you look up to as a business leader?
Jeff Vinnick, he's the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he is so successful and so smart, but at the same time, he knows about delegation and opportunity, which is not something that when you're a solopreneur, you can't delegate a whole heck of a lot. But Jeff Vinnick, it's exciting as a resident of this area to see what he has planned for developing the area down around the arena. Plus, it really impressed me, Tim, to see him take $50 million of his own money to put into arena upgrades. Plus, he bought a home here. He just really shows that he's committed to Tampa Bay, and not just profiting by being a sports team owner.
Wow. Well, I'm sure Tampa is so gracious to have him, and they're glad that they have him around and working with them. Now you have to choose one: street smarts or book smarts. Which one's for you?
Huh. That's an interesting question, because as a college student, I always disliked hearing people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, because I was bound and determined to prove that wrong, because I was getting such good grades. So my attitude was, no, I'm going to show people that it is what you know. However, now all these years later, I've really learned over time that it's who you know, in the sense that you will often hear me saying, you can never have too many contacts.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, since you've been doing this, you've been working for yourself for many years, you have all of these clients who rely on you. Can you share with the listeners a really stressful time kind of mentally, and what was going on, and how did you get through it?
Well, sadly, that opportunity that I referred to when I said I went and told my boss I'm leaving to go into business, and it wasn't Now Hear This. I'll try to keep it rather vague so as to not name names, etc. But the individual that I was going into business with was somebody, for all intents and purposes, on the other side of the country. I had never met this person, at least face to face, not even Skype for that matter. Everything was over email and telephone and text and things like that. And we were at it for, and mind you, I was still doing Now Hear This anyways. It actually gave me more time to do Now Hear This, but in trying to get that off the ground, I think we were close to a year into it, and I was contacted by a third party who started the ball rolling towards me finding out that this guy that I had gone into business with was a fraud. And it was really my faith that helped me cope with that situation. I knew that I was able to lay my head on the pillow at night, knowing that I was being honest and devoted to God and to my work, and I knew that I would be led toward whatever it was that I was actually supposed to be doing, which obviously was I was meant to do something on my own and not with a business partner.
So this had to do with money, that he was kind of extorting money from you, or like what was going, like how was it a fraud that, because it sounded like you had interaction for about a year. What was going on?
Yeah, what little bit of money we had started to take in, he was not reporting to me. He was cheating other people that we were trying to do business with. That again, I didn't even know he was doing business with these people. He was doing it under the banner of this organization that we had started, but he wasn't telling me. And anytime I might ask him about any prospects, he would say, "Oh, I talked to them yesterday and they said they're not interested." And it turns out that some of them he was actually doing things with and just wasn't telling me that he was getting something out of them. He's just putting it all in his pocket. And like I said, when this person contacted me out of the blue, it set the wheels in motion for me to eventually find out that he just had this long track record of really doing this to just anybody and anybody that he could find, any victim that he could find. And so it was. I think the silver lining was that I did have Now Hear This, and I thought, well, you know what? I just need to completely separate myself from this company altogether, take my name off of all the legal filings, etc., and just put all my time and effort 100% into Now Hear This.
And you had mentioned that it was your faith in God, that really helped you to kind of get through this moment of kind of despair and just feeling like, oh, why me?
Absolutely, and I made the reference before to having a confidant and it not being mom and dad. But my mom did tell me at the time. She said, you were in that job of yours for so long. She said that maybe God really just wanted you to focus on Now Hear This, and the only way He could get you to leave the comfort and safety of the job that you were in was to call you out to something that you thought, well, this is going to be directly serving God, so I'm going to go do this. And in reality, it was, no, that's not going to work out. This guy's going to prove to be a fraud. I'm really calling you out to do Now Hear This once and for all, as your 100% devoted full-time job.
So it was meant to be, and there's a reason for everything happening. I'm a firm believer in
Indeed.
that, for sure.
Indeed.
Now, since you've been, with Now Hear This, what's been one of the most fulfilling moments that you can recall? I'm sure you've had many, but what's one that's more recent?
Well, there's my longest tenured client. I quote unquote discovered her when she was in high school. She was performing in, you might call it a talent show. It was one of those idol type competitions. And so to start with her as this young high school girl who wasn't even really sure at the time that she wanted to really immerse herself as much into music as she is today, to take her and get her to the point where I got her performing on the Las Vegas Strip. I got her performing in Nashville. I got her performing in Los Angeles, Atlanta, markets like that. That has been really, really rewarding to me. And it's kind of one of those things where you put in all these hours and you go and perform at some of these venues that you wonder, what the heck are we doing here? And, I remember one time in particular being in Nashville and someone coming up to her at the end of her show and her calling me over, frantically, this is my manager, talk to him. And this was a publisher, which other than a record label is probably one of the best things you could hope for, is for a publisher to approach you. That's really rewarding because, like I said, you put in all those hours and you wonder, when is this going to pay off? And then you start seeing those fruits of your labor. Like I mentioned, Las Vegas, LA, Atlanta, some of the major markets, Nashville, and being approached, you think, okay, this is, as your question was, this is very fulfilling.
Wow. So, I mean, it must have been amazing to kind of to see her progress from, almost no one knowing her to now, being kind of at the top of the mountain, so to speak, or almost there. And
yeah, I'm secure enough in my manhood to admit that I had gotten her booked at the Rodeo Opry in Oklahoma City. And when we went to sound check that afternoon and I saw her up on the stage, working out a couple songs with the house band, I really started welling up with tears in my eyes, because I was so happy for her, and I was so proud of her to come to a venue like that and come to that point in her career where she was playing on that kind of stage. And this was something that they filmed, for television broadcast. So it was, it really did my heart good.
wow, it sounds like an amazing moment. Well, Bruce, we've come to the end of the show, but before we go, tell the listeners where they can find you online, your website, your podcast, and your business in general, and how can they reach out to you?
Sure. So if you go to nowhearthis.biz, and that's HEAR when you're spelling here and Now Hear This, go to nowhearthis.biz, and there's all kinds of stuff on there. I do write a blog every Monday on that site. There's a tab for the podcast that you could click into to get there. There are the Bruce's bonus book ebook series there. And I did an interview one time where the interviewer actually, and I didn't pay her to say this, but she made an argument that the tips that I give out in those books can really be applied in most cases to business and not just to performers. So look for the Bruce's bonus book series in the shop section of nowhearthis.biz. And then obviously, if you want to get in contact, there's a contact tab on there as well that you can click on to send an email or telephone as well, of course.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Bruce, for being on the show. It's been amazing to have you here, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlascos.com.